Hello YouTube, Joseph Crickmore here, and I promised that there would be at least this video made before the end of the year. It's not my last video of the year. That's already being taken by a different video that will be up by the 31st. So this video is a long time coming since the announcement was made, and I already knew I was going to make this video in advance. So this is the prediction video for Backstabbed in a Backwater Dungeon Infinite Gacha anime. That's how I abbreviate it. I don't care what anyone else says. Now, first things first. If nobody else on the internet is going to represent this series and they're all going to call it trash and edgy and it's low rate, it's 2 stars, it's like, do you people not realize that America's not the only continent in the world that distributes anime? There's a reason these things get greenlit for an anime in the first place. They get really popular because, think of it this way. They get distributed in their home countries first. Here's an example. Ben 10. And the only reason I say Ben 10 is because it's the one cartoon I can think of, off the top of my head, that's really popular all over the world. I know, there are plenty of others. But my point I'm trying to make is, we as Americans get the Ben 10 episodes first. And thus, we would think that we're the only market for it. Until you learn there's a global market for Ben 10. And it gets dubbed in other languages for other countries, okay? It's the same way with anime, except we are not the distributors. We are not in-country creating anime. We are not. That's just not what we do. Japan is the homeland of anime creation, right? All the studios are over there. Therefore, they get it first. We get it maybe on the same day, maybe a day after from Japan's release, and we may or may not get it in English, which is starting to become a rarity for certain animes to get an English dub or not. Undead Murder Farce still doesn't have an English dub after 2 years. So the point I'm trying to make is, we are not the only market for anime in the world. And if people want to represent a certain series, I will be the vanguard of representing Infinite Gacha. Why? I love this series. I don't know why people don't. Now, tangent aside, I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest. If people say that there are no fans of this series, then I am not alive. Because I am a fan of this. Okay? What's wrong with liking a clear revenge plot where you don't have to worry about a character's morality because he knows what his revenge target is, everyone in that party. He's aware that every race other than humans hate humans. Well, there's a one minor exception, but it's a really weird exception. Like, he's fully aware that he's fighting an uphill battle. He also was murdered, assassinated, under a pretense that he doesn't even know the context of. Okay. Before I dive into the predictions of the length and talking about the plot, I need to make another point perfectly clear. It has to be rated MA, or at least like 16 plus. If you make this series TV 14, you're going to tone down way too much. It's going to look like Failure Frame, but worse. And I see that as the common complaint when it got the anime announcement. I liked it when it got announced. I made a whole video on the announcement. But other people, nope. They look at it like, wow, it's the longest light novel title ever. And I'm like, yeah, because it is. Because certain web novel websites wouldn't have descriptions. They only had the place for the title. And so you had to make your title a description for people to even click on your novel to read in the first place. That is very lazy design. And as a graphic designer myself, it is appalling that that didn't get fixed sooner. But I'm saying it has to be rated MA. It has to be rated 16 plus. It needs to be for an older audience. Why? The gore. There are moments in this series that feel like if you tone them down, it's not going to have the same impact. Now, is it as gory as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Baki or the fights in Record of Ragnarok? Well, it's not that gory. But there is definitely a lot of themes in this series that, if you tone them down, it's not going to have the same effect. I only say this because the tone of a series matters. The level of its adaptation matters. So I hope you're all getting the picture that once I dive into these explanations of where the story would go for the anime and how fast it might go pacing-wise and the prediction and everything, I need you all to know that I am advocating that it be either for 16-year-olds and older or a mature audience only. Okay? So they have full reign to show the literal, harsh, and cruel world that humans live in this story, okay? Okay. With that out of the way, we can finally get right to the actual prediction in question. So, first things first. How many volumes of the source material will this anime cover? My prediction is 3. 1, 2, and 3. And I'll get into that just now, actually. Now, Volume 1 sets up all the stuff with the characters. Our main character's name is Light. He's a part of this adventuring party called the Concord of the Tribes, and their outward goal is to be this unifying adventure party that has one member of each race in this world to, like, have representation and show that all the races can work as a unified front. Because it's not just that they all don't like humans secretly, but some races don't like other races for political reasons. Go figure. So they all, like, kind of come together and decide on this party, and then Light's with them, and they think he's a master. Now that's going to be important. They think he's a master because he has a gift. No other race has it. All the other races have their superior physical traits, or they have magic. Humans are the only ones that can be born with gifts. And it can be, like, anywhere from a cheat skill to something unorthodox to straight up a gacha. And that's what Light gets. He gets this thing called the Unlimited Gacha as his gift. And on the surface, it's very weak and pathetic. It spits out cards, and those cards replicate magic. But they give errors or really pathetic things like a broken spoon or a molded piece of bread, I think was one of them. And they're tired of this facade, so they go to this really remote backwater dungeon, it's right there in the title, and they tell Light, you're out of the party. And then they reveal that none of them liked him at all, and they were just pretending because they thought he was a master, and he wasn't really a master from what they think, anyway, of his skill, his gift. They try to assassinate him and keep it covered up because it's a cave and they're the only ones that know what they're doing. Light's escaping with his life from what he thought were his comrades, but they betrayed him. He stumbles on a teleportation trap. He gets deeper into the dungeon. They all just think he's going to die, and they don't even bother going after him. They all ditch. They all, like, dip out of the cave, the dungeon. They're gone. So then Light's deeper in the dungeon. He tries to use his gift as a last-ditch effort to escape a level 1000 Hellhound, but then, miraculously, he summons his first subordinate, a level 9999 maid. Now, before anyone says anything, there is no harem in this series, and the false advertising of the manga is the most crushing, most cruel thing you can do with advertising. You try to market as a harem? No way. No way. No. So then, the maid, whose name is May, she explains to Light his gift and how the true nature of his gift is it draws in mana from the air to make a card. But because there's very thin mana on the surface, It was making weak and pathetic cards. But if you're in the deepest part of the deepest dungeon, the chance of getting greater cards out of his gacha is exponentially increased to the point that it's basically a guaranteed for all the good stuff. So then May thinks that Light went there purposefully for his gift to work better, but he then spills his guts to her about he was betrayed and he lets out all his emotions, and then he gets an idea. He's not going to run. He's not going to take pity on them. He's not going to just have them killed by May and to get it over with quickly. Light's like, no. I want to take revenge personally, so I want to get stronger. And that's the kickstone. That's the kicker that starts off the plot. Okay? Light starts summoning more out of his gacha, and we skip ahead 3 years to after he's amounted a large force in the dungeon, and he made it into his personal country at this point for how strong it is. For anyone that wants to ask me right now, what happened in those 3 years? Is it ever brought up? Yes, it is. But that will literally be the beginning of Season 2 if they end on Volume 3. So I'm basically saying what happens in those 3-year time skip is the beginning of Volume 4. Okay. So the rest of this first volume is after this time skip. You meet some more of Light's subordinates. You meet Ellie, the witch. You meet Ayuki, the beast tamer cat. And then you meet Nazuna, who I can already tell right now is going to be a fan favorite character in the anime. Not even just for her design or being waifu material, because all 4 of them are waifu material. And by the way, Mei, Ayuki, Ellie, and Nazuna are the only 4 subordinates he'll ever have that are level 9,999. All the others are weaker than them, but not by enough that it should matter. But anywho, Nazuna, I can already tell, is going to be a fan favorite. She's strong, and she's debatably the strongest of the 4, because there's actually a fight way later in the novels where she actually gets to show off her strength, and you can tell, yeah, that's her, the strongest subordinate Light summoned. And but she's also funny. She's a little bit dumb. She doesn't know how to hold back. Oh, it's going to be some funny moments. Then they find one of his revenge targets. Garo. That's right. The wolf beast. His name is Garo. Light starts to lure them in, and he ensnares them in a trap. And he takes his revenge on Garo. Now you would think, oh, did he kill him? Nope. Light wants to know more about this whole thing, about why was he brought up to be assassinated in the first place. What was this master business? So he questions Garo, and he didn't know. He was like one of the lowest pegs in the party aside from Light. None of them told him anything else. So Light has to go after more higher up in the party, as well as officials in other countries. So he doesn't kill Garo. He holds on to him and tortures him infinitely while healing him infinitely. It is literally like Overlord. But he does that for any of the adventurers in the party he comes across, because he's going to get his revenge. And part of his revenge is torturing them indefinitely. And then the rest of the volume is him going onto the surface with 2 of his other subordinates. They're really cool to be a adventuring party of his own. And he's made to make a name for himself as an adventurer. They go to another dungeon, they meet some human kids. They have the unfortunate luck of running into an elf and a dark elf on the run who are basically serial killers. And this is the point where we learn that Light is more than just a boy out for revenge against the party. He takes a stand. He likes those human children, and one of them, well, no, they have the unfortunate luck of running into the 2 serial killer elves, and then Light realizes, okay, I have this power. You are causing mayhem to humans. I will annihilate you. So here's where we get a little more characterization for Light. He's not just a blind, rage-filled boy wanting revenge. He will stand up for humans where they're being persecuted against by other races. So, like, even though he barely knew those kids that are roughly his age, maybe like 2 of them are older than him, one of them I think was younger than him, he barely knew them a day or two. And he could already tell that that elf and dark elf, even though they weren't related to his mission, that they needed to be dealt with. So he's also helping humanity stand against the other countries who want to persecute them for being the weakest race. And I summarize all of Volume 1 for that reason. Because I think the pacing of Volume 1's anime is 4 episodes. Okay? The first episode is all of that set up with him getting lost in the dungeon after being betrayed and summoning May. The second episode could be the time skip and then dealing with Garo. And then 2 episodes of the dungeon stuff, the kids, and dealing with all that. Okay? Moving on to Volume 2, because of the nonsense with the elf and the dark elf, the Elven Queendom is starting to make their moves to go after them because they stole a treasure from the Elven Queendom, and they're about to deploy the Knights, the White Knights I think they're called, to go after them because they stole a national treasure of the country. That's how valuable the thing was, but, Light already destroyed it. And no one knows that they're not still alive. But then, this is where we get Sasha, the elf from the Concord of the Tribes, and Light's like, ooh, we found her. Time to lure her in for my revenge. So then, the big thing with Volume 2 is in the territory of the Elven Queendom, a giant tower emerges out of nowhere, literally overnight. And that's the site of some amazing battles that I'm not even going to spoil. I'm not going to talk about it. But, he gets his revenge on Sasha. He captures her for the torturing and getting information while also, inflicting pain because revenge. But also to keep them all alive in the event that I want to show the world just how pathetic this party really was. But this was also the volume of new characters. 4 new characters to be specific. I know, it seems weird. Another batch of 4. But they are the level 7,777 characters. You see what I mean there? They're weaker, but they're still pretty strong. And I feel like they are also going to be some fan favorites too. Jack, Suzu, and Locke. Mara, and Ice Heat. I could already see people loving 2 of those characters. Maybe another one. And I like Jack. Jack's cool. But, man, once you get to the later novels, reading the side stories where it's just those characters interacting with each other is so much characterization you didn't know about them. And it feels so cool to read those. But then Nazuna gets a funny moment in this arc. And Light also is like, well, I have all this power. Why not I just take over a country and make it a puppet state for my agenda to make humans have autonomy? And that's essentially what he starts doing with this arc. The Queendom doesn't want to back down. They sent in their knights, even though they got annihilated. And Light essentially decides, I am going to just completely crush their ruling government by essentially brainwashing them into following my will. I'm not going to say anything else. You'll have to wait to see how it plays out in the anime because it's such a sight to behold. Now for Volume 2, I think its pacing is going to be 5, 6, 7, and 8. With 2 of those episodes being entirely dedicated to the battles in the tower, the setup for the tower, and then the final of this arc will be wrapping up everything in the arc to then set up the next arc. Which brings us to Volume 3. The final volume I think the anime will cover. Because the volume itself ends with such a happy ending for Light as a character. Because here's the thing. He was in the deepest dungeon for 3 years. He couldn't even get out of it until like 2.5 of those 3 years had gone by. He returned to his village as soon as he could after he escaped the dungeon to find his entire village destroyed, burned to the ground. No survivors were found. He assumed the worst. Now back to present day. He was informed that one of his revenge targets might die of other means because Sione, who is a dark elf, liked doing research, and that she might die because of her research going haywire. But she also then summoned a soul dragon, which is also just a nasty creature. Light has to then take the initiative to get to Sione for his revenge, and also to save her from not dying from her own stupid experiment. And then, like, because of the soul dragon, he gets to see the souls of his deceased parents that tell him, keep doing what you're doing, help those that need the help, punish the wicked, but also your siblings are alive. Because Light was not an only child. He had a sister and a brother. And they confirmed to him that his siblings were alive. And that's how the volume ends. See what I mean? It's a cliffhanger, but it's enough of a cliffhanger where if you didn't want to keep going, you could stop right there and think that that would be fine. But if you wanted to keep going, you had a nice place to go to Volume 4. So my thoughts on the pacing of Volume 3 is there's actually not much to Volume 3 in the first place. So I'm going to say Volume 3 is only going to get 9, 10, 11, and 12. With half of that being the path to get to her, and then the other half is dealing with her, the soul dragon, and having a finale. But my other idea is that Volume 2 might need Episode 9, because there's actually a lot of content in Volume 2, and I don't think 3 will need 4 episodes. So that's interchangeable. We'll see how much my prediction holds up, because unlike Level 2 Cheat, I was not expecting that anime to only do 1 volume and then 1 chapter of the next one. They took me by surprise with how detailed that anime ended up being. And kudos to them. That means we might end up getting the next big isekai that could go on for the next decade as an anime. If you pace it correctly, you keep in as many details as you can, you make sure you preserve the spirit of that novel, you could make that a long-running isekai. Nothing anime-wise. Nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? But with this one, it's not as simple as that. I said at the beginning, it has to be a certain TV rating, otherwise they're going to change so many things about how these characters act in the world. You need to give it the right age demographic, so that way you're able to show the cruel, harsh torture that goes on. Like, when the series is trying to be like as obvious as possible to root for Light and to not like any of the other races, they are very obvious and blatant about that. They treat humans like slaves, they treat them like dirt, they use them for their own amusement, torture, pleasure, not afraid of just killing them for the heck of it, for fun. They really don't have a position at all. It's kind of sad when you think about it that way. And like, I mentioned this in I mentioned this when I made it a part of my 10 novels and manga that I wanted to get in anime. It was number one for a reason. And I made that reason known. I'll say it again. I am at a point where I'm tired of watching isekais where humans are portrayed as the bad guy. Like, I know it was one country in slime, but there are still evil humans in slime. I hate how in Overlord, some cases they are, or they're just stupid. I hate how Skeleton Knight in Another World has humans just being evil and oppressing elves and doing what they do with other races. Yeah. Big deal. That gets tiring after a while. To go into a series like this, where the opposite dynamic is present, where we are the ones who are considered weak to the other races and are being persecuted against. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not even going to take a moral stand on this. I'm saying it's good and unique narrative-wise. Because how many other series is out there treat humans in a fantasy setting like they're garbage? And I'm not talking about humans hating on other humans. There's no room for that in a world where literally everybody else hates you. Okay? So, to not make this video go on for much longer, I will make my final verdict. Volume 1, episodes 1 through 4. Volume 2, episodes 5 through 8. And Volume 3, episodes 9 through 12. With a little bit of wiggle room at episode 8 or 9 for 2 or 3. Of course, I'm working under the assumption that it's only going to get 12 episodes. If that ends up being wrong, then they'll probably pace it better with more episodes. So thank you all so much for watching this prediction video that I'm getting out before the end of the year. Stay tuned for one more Azur Lane poll video before the end of the year. And stay tuned for Solo Leveling rewatch reactions, because I'm going to rewatch Season 1. It may or may not be on my Patreon. It might be on my Daily Motion account. I have to, space out where I put these things now in the event that I run out of Patreon space to upload stuff. I still have my backup, so if stuff goes over there, it'll be over there. But I am hoping that I get those out before Season 2 starts with Solo Leveling and all the other anime that'll start in January. I will probably wait for an English dub for most of them. If I don't wait for the dub, then I'm not going to switch halfway through a season. And I've already made up my mind with Level 2 Cheat that I'm not going to make it another reaction with the English dub. There would be no point to. I'll watch it on my own time. I'll have to update how I put that on my Patreon. So, sorry if anybody was hyped for that. I'm not about to watch it and record it a second time when technically I could use that time recording-wise for new stuff. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you liked it. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the video with a friend, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.